guys, welcome to our channel, guys. So, also Layanira, say hi.
Okay.
And I'm Chris. This is Sam.
All right, children, listen up.
Yesenia.
Okay, so today, let me see. We finished chapter 10 yesterday.
This is our
Pretty much
6th period.
Chapter 10. A couple things, just a couple reminders. What happened in chapter 10? The most important thing that happened in chapter 10.
They got caught
They got caught. Where did they get caught?
in the room above that one guy's shop.
Mr. Sherrington's shop, in that room. And what did they discover about Mr. Sherrington?
He was a thought
He
police.
was from the thought police, right? And the entire time that they were in that room, all those private moments they had were not private at all. There actually was a telescreen in their room, but it was covered by a frame. And we also find that Mr. Sherrington actually isn't as old and all those views that they
Crinkly.
had of him. Somehow, I don't know how he was able to hide that, but
Makeup.
he did that. Okay, so today we're going to start on book 3. The way that we are going to do book 3, each chapter, I mean, there's 6 of us. Book 3 has
6 of
6
us.
chapters. We are going to do an infographic presentation on your chapter. So today and Monday, you guys are going to read the chapter that I'm going to assign you right now. Monday. Okay. So, team
Why is
1,
it so loud?
you guys have chapter 1. Team 2, you guys have chapter 2. You guys have chapter 3. Angelito, put that away. Oh, darling. Yadira, your team had chapter 4. Marisol, your team had chapter 5. And then, Juanito, your team has chapter 6. Okay? So today and tomorrow, not tomorrow, because I won't be here. Today and Monday,
Is he in
I
here
need
still?
you reading.
Oh, the guy from the auto school? Yeah, he
Your
was.
schedule book looks great.
No speak Spanish.
All right, they're gonna pass out a handout to you in just a moment.
Should I whistle? Should I do whistle? I can't do it. I need.
How can you do that?
Okay.
You just suck in air. Like this?
Today and Monday.
Mascarilla.
Monday. Monday.
See, Sam says she wants some of your food.
I really want to be eating candy right now, and I'm trying to
Can you
stop.
whistle like this? Like that?
No, right now I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I'll probably bite my tongue.
Yo, look at these bros. Look at these broskies. Hey, Schmexy. Bros. Look at them broskies. Look at that bitch. Look at that bitch.
Okay.
I'll get you a pen. I'll get you a pen. Here we go. Pen, her pen. A book.
Madeline is passing out your handout. Now, the reading, I want you to either, I guess if you insist to do it by yourself, you can. But I think it's a good idea that you partner read with someone and read a few paragraphs
Oh,
yourself.
I thought it would be
Partner read the next few paragraphs until you finish reading your chapter.
Miss
Okay?
Gabriela, you want to be
So
a part
once
of our YouTube
again,
channel?
Miguel,
Want to say hi? Who? You see this
We're kind of boring. We're not
competition?
even talking.
Okay, what do you guys want to know? Okay.
Okay, so today we've been to 6 classes. We have 1 more. But
Bro, I told him we were in 6th period.
okay, we can retell them again.
Anyways, Dayanira's lesbian, okay?
Why would you expose me like that?
I'm gay. Better?
Angelito, your team has chapter 3.
Bro, those bitches over there think they can make a better YouTube channel than us. You believe that shit?
Chapter 4, we said.
Look at these bitches, bro.
Yadira, your
Look.
team has chapter 4.
Look at these. They think they can get a better YouTube channel than us.
Where's chapter 3?
Oh my god, y'all, look at these little bears. Like it's Hello Pussy.
So let me remind you,
Chapter
your
one.
class today and Monday is to finish reading your chapter. All you do is responsible for is yours.
Why you like that?
Read it well, know it
Why
well.
you like that? Why you like
Okay. And
Miss Carleo.
don't forget, reading involves reading, not talking. Okay?
Miss Carleo.
Mande.
Do you want to say hi to my YouTube channel?
This is a YouTube channel? Yeah.
That's Miss Carleo. She's our 6th grade teacher. We're gonna, oh my god, we should do this daily. So who gets the most followers before we leave school?
The text pages and the PDF pages.
I need help.
¿Cuál página? Oh, you need pen?
I need help.
Chapter 1.
¿Cuál
Book
página?
3.
I'm
Book
gonna
3.
look
Yeah,
it
you
up.
send us page numbers.
Right there.
I'm gonna just screenshot of this and put it in the warm-up
I was in
section, that way you can
239.
refer to it.
Smells like fun in here.
It smells like.
Fun.
No, it smells like the noodles.
Brothers, bruh. I smell fun. You smell fun?
No.
You don't smell fun.
I'm sick. I can't.
COVID? So you lost? You are like Papa. You lost. Yesenia, you're going home? Miss Carrillo, tell Yesenia she can't go home.
Yesenia, this is your team. You can't go home.
Yeah, Yesenia, you can't leave us.
Lito.
Daddy's hating. So it's like, go
Turn around.
grandma.
I want to make sure you have
Is your grandma there?
Yes.
I'm so used to taking it to Carlos and he starts laughing. We like talking about. He loves you? Oh, you want me to tell him? Carlos, if you ever watch this, Carlos, you owe Sam $20. Sam Soto. Or Sam Hoto.
I wrote it right this time.
Make sure you have your book out.
Yeah, CHRIS.
C
KIH.
K-I
Is it? Yeah, no? KH. PHER.
V.
Where's B?
Right there. You are looking like a V.
There. Hold on. Oh, isn't it together?
Oh, there's like, no. There's a hyphen.
Yeah. And then Peres.
Yeah. Roar, Yesenia. Do a roar. Let me hear you roar. He won't be considered a furry. Sam's a furry.
Bro.
She's definitely a furry. Bro.
I'm telling you.
So what's the movie? Do we start reading?
Yeah. Go ahead and start reading. Remember, you need to put a timer. You,
Put a timer.
You and your partner are reading. You and your partner. Today is partner reading.
Period.
Okay, I start. Can I start?
You want to start reading?
Yeah.
Okay. You go.
He was lying into something that felt like a camp bed, except that it was higher off the ground and that he was fixed down in some way so that he could not move. Light that seemed stronger than usual was falling on his face. O'Brien was standing at his side, looking down at him intently. At the other side of him stood a man in a white coat, holding a high-powered mic syringe. Even after his eyes were open, he took in his surroundings on breath. He had the impression of swimming up into this room from some quite different world, a sort of underwater world far beneath it. How long he had been down there, he didn't know. Since the moment when they arrested him, he had not seen darkness or daylight. Besides, his memories were now continuousness. There had been times where consciousness, even the sort of consciousness that one has in sleep, had stopped the dead and started again after a blank interval, but whether the intervals were of days, of weeks, or only seconds, there was no way of knowing.
With the first blow from the elbow, the
With the
nightmare.
phrase first.
The first, they said with the first
phrase.
blow.
Look at the video.
With the first blow on the elbow, the nightmare had started. Later, he He realized that all that happened was merely a preliminary or routine interrogation to which nearly all prisoners were subjected. There was a long range of criminal sponge, sabotage, and the like to which everyone had confessed a matter of course. Confession has a formality through the torture was real. How many times he had been beaten. How long the beatings had continued, he would not remember. Anyways, there were 5 or 6 men. Always there were 5 or 6 men in black uniforms at him simultaneously. Sometimes it was fists, sometimes it was tantrum, sometimes it was steel rod, sometimes it was a booty hole or dealing, and sometimes it was boots. There were times when he rolled up the floor as shameless as an animal, withering his body his way in an endless, hopeless effort to dodge the kicks, and simply inviting more and yet more kicks in his ribs, in his belly, on his elbows, on his shins, in his groins, on his testicles. His testicles on the bones at the base of the spine. There were times when it went on and on till the cruel, unforgivable thing seemed to him not the guards continued to beat him, but he could not force himself into losing consciousness. There were times where his nerve was so short him that began shouting for mercy even before the beating began, when the mere sight of the first dawn back for a blow was enough to make him pour forth a confession of real and imaginary crimes. There were other times when he started out with resolving the confessions, nothing. Every word had been forced out of him between gasps of pain, and there were sometimes where he feebly tried to compromise, when he said to himself, I will confess, but not yet. I must hold out until the pain becomes unbearable.
3 more kicks, 2 more kicks, and then I will tell them what they want.
Why are we reading about
Sometimes he has beaten till he could hardly stand, then flung like a sack of potatoes onto the stone floor of the cell, left to recuperate for a few hours, and then taken out of beaten again. There were also long periods of recovery. He remembered them dimly, because they were spent chiefly in sleep or stupor. How do you say that?
Stupor.
He remembered a cell and a plank bed, a sort of shelf sticking onto from the wall, and a tin washpan, and meals of hot soup and bread, and sometimes coffee. He remembered a surly barber arriving to scrape his chin and chop his hair, and businesslike, unsympathetic men in white coats feeling his pulse, tapping his reflexes, turning up his eyelids, running harsh fingers over him in search of broken bones, and shooting needles into his arm to make him sleep. The beatings grew less frequent and became mainly threat, a horror to which he could be sent back at any moment when his answers were unsatisfactory. His questioners now were not ruffians in black uniforms, but party intellectuals, little round-table men with quick movements and flashing spectacles who worked on him in relays over periods in which lasted, he thought, he could not be sure, 10 or 12 hours at a stretch. These other questioners saw to it that he was on constant slight pain, but it was not chiefly pain that they relied on. They slapped his face, wrung his ears, pulled his hair, made him stand on one leg, refused him to urinate, shone lights in his face until his eyes ran with water. But with the aim of this was simply to humiliate him and destroy his power of arguing and reasoning. Their real weapon was the merciless questioning that went on and on for an hour and after hour, tripping him up, laying traps for him, twisting everything that he said, convicting him at every step of his lies in self-contradiction, until he began weeping as much from shame as from nervous fatigue. Sometimes he would weep off a dozen times in a single session. 10, 18, 13. Most of the time...
That's wrong.
Boy, 10, 19, 18.
Oh, they said 18.
Most of the time they screamed abuse at him and threatened at every hesitation to convict him over the boards again. But sometimes they would suddenly change their tone, call him comrade, appeal to him in the name of insult and big brother, and ask him sorrowfully whether, even though he had not enough loyalty to the party left to him, wished into the evil he had done. When his nerves were in rags after hours of questioning, even this appeal
Yeah.
couldn't receive him to sniveling tears. In the end, the nagging voices broke him down, more completely than the boots and fists of the guards. He became simply a mouth that uttered and a hand that signed whatever was demanded of him. His sole concern was to find out what they wanted him to confess, and then confess it quickly before. And in the booth, he became a simply mouth that uttered, a hand that signed whatever was demanded of him. His whole concern was to find out what they wanted him to confess and then confess it before bullying started anyway. He confessed to assimilation of eminent party members, the distribution of seditious pamphlets, embezzlement of public funds, military secrets, sabotage of
That's
everything.
spicy, huh?
He confessed that he had been a spy in the pay of the East Asian government as far as 1968. He confessed
You probably like this.
that
You probably had water
he
like
has a religious belief. He was a religious believer and a married capitalism and a sexual pervert. He confessed that the mayor of
What?
he confessed that he had murdered his wife, although he knew, and his questioners must have known that his wife was still alive. He confessed that for years he had been in personal touch with Goldstein and had been a member of an underground organization which had been included almost every human being he had ever known. It was easier to confess
It's
everything
spicy.
and implicate everybody. Besides in a scene, it was all true. It was true
Jelani.
that he had been the enemy of the party.
Jelani.
And in the eyes of the party, there was no distinction between the thought and the deed.
What do you get? What do you get? You want?
There were also memories of another party. They stood out in his mind disconnected.
Alex.
Like pictures with blackness all around
You
them.
ready?
He was in a cell which might have been either dark or light because he could not see something inspect a pair of eyes. Near at hand, some kind of instrument was ticking slowly and regularly. The eyes grew larger and more luminous. Suddenly, he floated out of his seat, divided into the eyes, and was swallowed up.
Where were you? Damn, this girl shit bad, y'all. This shit's spicy. Yeah, like a shit ton. I feel like I took it all over one hand.
Hello, thank you.
Okay, where? He's strapped. He's strapped. He's strapped on a dildo. He was strapped into a chair surrounded by dials under dazzling lights. A man in a white coat was reading the dials. There was a tramp of heavy-toed boots outside. The door clanged open. The waxed-faced officer marched in, followed by two guards. Room 101, said the officer. Let me try that again. Room 101, said the officer. The man in the white coat did not turn around. He did not look at Winston either. He was looking only at the dials. He was rolling around down a mighty corridor, a kilometer wide, full of glorious golden light, roaring with laughter and shouting out confession at the top of his voice. He was confessing everything when the things he... Zena almost killed me right. This bitch. I was dying. Where was I? Top of his voice, confessing, succeeding in holding back under the torture. He was relating the entire history of his life to an audience who knew it already. With him were the guards, the other questionnaires, the men in the white coats, O'Brien, Julia, Mr. Charrington, all rolling down the corridor together and shouting with laughter. Some dreadful thing which had lain embedded in the future had somehow been skipped over and had happened. Everything was all right. There was no more pain. The last detail of his life was laid there. Understood, forgiven. He was starting up from the plank bed and half century. Why are you looking at me like that?
I'm looking away.
Century that he had heard O'Brien's voice. All through his interrogation, although he had never seen him. He had the feeling that O'Brien was at his elbow, just out of sight. It was O'Brien who was detecting everything. It was he who set the guards into Winston, preventing him from killing him. It was he who decided when Winston should scream with pain. when he should have respite, when he should be fed, when he should sleep, when the drugs should be pumped into his arms. It was he who asked the questions and suggested the answers. He was the tormentor. He was the protector. He was the inquisitor. He was a friend. And once Winston could not remember whether it was in drugged sleep or in normal sleep, or even in a moment of wakefulness, a voice murmured in his ear, "Don't worry, Winston. You are in my keeping. For 7 years I've watched over you." Oh wait. 7 years I've watched over you. Now the turning point has come. I shall save you. I shall make you perfect. He was not sure whether it was O'Brien's voice, but it was the same voice that said to him, "We shall meet in the place where there is no darkness."
What are you doing?
Another dream 7 years ago. He did not remember any ending to his interrogation. There was a period of blackness and in the cell no room in which he had no gradually materialized all around him. He was almost flat on his back and unable to move. His body was held down at every essential point. Even the back of his head gripped in some other manner. O'Brien was looking down at him, gravely and utterly sad. His face, as seen from below, looked coarse and worn, from with pouches under his eyes, tired lines from the nose to the chin. He was older than Winston. He had thought him. He was perhaps 84, 88, 48, or 50. Near his hand, there was a dial with the lever on top of the fingers running around the face. "I told you," said O'Brien. "That was when we met again. It would be here." "Yeah," said Winston. Without any warning, exception a slight movement when O'Brien's brain had a wave of pain flooded his body. It had been frightening pain because he could not see what was happening, and he had felt the feeling mortal injury from being done to him. He did not know whether the thing was really happening or whether the effect was electrocuted, produced by his body being wrenched out of shape and joints were being slowly torn. No, my mouth was watery. Being slowly torn apart. Although the pain had brought back the sweat of his forehead, the worst of all was the fear that was in his backbone was about to snap. He set his teeth and breathed hard through his nose, trying to keep silent as long as possible. "You're afraid," said LeBron. Watching his face, I was in another movement. Something was going to break. A special fear that is to be your backbone. You have a vivid mental picture of a vertebrae snapping apart and spinal fluid dripping out of them. But as we were thinking, is it not, Winston? Winston did not answer. O'Brien drew back the lever on the dial. The wave of pain receded almost as quickly as it had come.
That was for you, said O'Brien. You can see that the numbers on his dial run up on to 100. Will you please remember throughout our conversation that I have it in my power to inflict pain on you at any moment and to whatever degree I choose. If you tell me any lies or attempt to provoke it in any way, or even fall below your usual level of intelligence, you will cry out of with pain. Instantly, do you understand that? Yes, said Winston. O'Brien's manner became less severe. He resettled his spectacles thoughtfully and took a pace or two up and down. When he spoke, his voice was gentle and patient. He had the air of a doctor, a teacher, even a priest, anxious to explain and persuade rather than to punish. "I am taking trouble with you, Winston," he says, "because you are worth trouble. You know perfectly well what is the matter with you. You have known for years, though you have fought against the knowledge. You are mentally deranged.
Like a drug dealer.
You suffer from a defective memory. You are unable to remember real events, and you persuade yourself that you remember other events which have never happened. Unfortunately, it is curable. Fortunately, you have never cured yourself of it because you did not choose to. There was a small effort of the will that you were not ready to make. Even now, I am well aware you are clinging into your disease, under the impression that it was a virtue. Now we're all take an example. At this moment, which power in Oceania at war with? When I was arrested, Oceania was at war with East Asia. Good. And Oceania has always been at war with East Asia. Has it not? Winston drew in his breath. He opened his mouth to speak, then did not speak. He could not take his eyes away from the dial. "The truth, please, Winston. Your truth. Tell me what you think you remember." "I remember that until only a week before I was arrested, we were not at war with East Asia at all. We were in alliance with them. The war was against Eurasia.
Eurasian?
that had lasted for years before that. O'Brien stopped him with a movement of the hand. Another example, he said. Some years ago, you had a serious delusion indeed. You believed that the three one-time party members named Jones, Aronson, and Rutherford men who were executed for treachery and sabotage, after making the fullest possible confession, were not guilty of the crimes they were charged with. You believed that you had seen an unmistakable documentary evidence proving that their confessions were false. There was a certain photograph about which you had hallucinations. You believed that you had actually held it in your hands. It was a photograph something like this. An oblong slip of newspaper had appeared.
Hey y'all,
between
you guys want her Instagram? She's kind of single.
I'm
single.
It was within the angle of Winston's vision. It was a photograph, and there was no question of his identity. It was the photograph. It was another copy of the photograph of Jones and Rutherford and the party function in New York, which he had changed upon 11 years ago, promptly destroyed. For only an instant, it was before his eyes. Then it was out of sight again. But he had seen it, unquestionably.
Damn,
He
girl,
had
you
seen
read
it.
46 too?
He made a desperate, agonizing effort to wrench the top half of his body free. It was impossible to move so much as a centimeter in a direction. For the movement, he had ever forgotten the dial. All he wants was to hold the photograph in his fingers again, or at least to see it. It exists, he cried. No, said O'Brien. He stepped across the room. There was a memory hole in the opposite wall. O'Brien lifted the grating, and seeing the frail slip of paper was reeling away of the current of warm air. It was vanishing in a flash of flame. O'Brien turned away from the wall.
You're not even reading what you sent her.
Ashes, he said, not even identical ashes.
Is that how she helps
Dust,
you?
it does not exist. It never existed. But it did exist. It does exist. It exists in memory. I remember it. You remember it. I do not remember it, said O'Brien.
I didn't hear this page. I didn't hear that page.
Well, because you were talking over there with one of them, the ghost.
She's single, y'all. Look how schmexy she is, bro. Look at them eyeballs for them weirdos that like to pull out eyeballs.
Who have eyeball fetishes.
Yeah, imagine they're like going in at licking their eyeballs.
Then they go,
And then their eyeballs in their mouth.
oh no.
And
They
then,
play with
here,
it like
put
gum.
it back in. Anyways. Okay. Brian was looking down from him spectacly.
Where are you
more
reading?
than- O'Brien.
No,
That's Winston. That's not O'Brien.
I never said
Oh,
O'Brien.
you did. Winston's heart sank. That was double stink. Oh, double think. He had a feeling of deadly helplessness. If he could have been certain that O'Brien was lying, it would not have seemed to matter, but it was perfectly possible that Brian had really forgotten the photograph. Anyways, bye guys. That's the end of our channel video. Come again.
28 minutes.
I know, huh?
Y'all
Anyways,
should definitely come back.
come back tomorrow, y'all.
Yeah.
We upload daily. Anyways, say bye, say bye, Yesenia. Yesenia, get a wave. Yesenia. Okay.